Hey everyone, thanks for joining us this week on our expert interview series. And I've got someone here who's really special. Most recently had met her. Her name's Rachel, and she is a massage therapist and seven-figure clinic owner in the US. And I thought it would be an amazing person to bring on to really share some of her experiences about how you can really go from being a solo practitioner to doing some really great things, having seven-figure business, going into consulting. She most recently wrote a book, and I'm really excited to have her come on and share some of her wisdom with everyone here. So thanks for joining me this week. Really excited to dig in.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
No problem. So why don't you just do a little bit of an intro, kind of tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got started, and sort of like your journey so far into being able to be in a massage business, but also having like a seven-figure clinic with a large staff and so on.
Sure. So my name is Rachel Bider. I'm a licensed massage therapist in New York City, and I started my private practice in 2008. And I had this like kind of 5-year plan all laid out when I got out of school. So I thought year one, I'm just going to see where I can get hired, get my hands on as many people as I can, get that practice in, and if I'm very, very busy, maybe by year three, I might be lucky enough to have a private practice. And by year five, then maybe I'd have employees if I was just super slammed in my private practice. And I did all of that. I just did it in 6 months. I've always been kind of impatient. And I do like to ask myself, if you could do it in 5 years, why not 6 months? But it did definitely grow much more rapidly than I thought it would. And certainly when I started out, I had no idea that I would grow as quickly as I did. But what I found out was early in my career, I felt like working for other people. I just felt like a bystander. I didn't feel impactful. I didn't feel like I was in control over my day. And I always think about, the 4 tenets of entrepreneurship that really speak to me are freedom with your time, freedom with your money, to have the kind of financial freedom, freedom with your relationships, like the kind of work relationships that you have, whether that's with peers, coworkers, employees, clients. And then lastly, freedom to give back in the ways that you want to contribute. And I just felt like when I was working for other people, I didn't have a great experience. It's not to say that I didn't have great bosses, because I certainly did, but I also just felt often exploited and like my time wasn't being valued. And so I knew very quickly, I had tried working for a chiropractor and I loved that kind of clinical work, but I didn't like the cold paper sheets and like the rapid pace of treating people back to back like that. And the bright overhead lights, it didn't feel very relaxing to me, and I tried working for a little while for a surgeon, and he was doing post reconstructive surgery, like post mastectomy reconstruction for women who'd had breast cancer, and that was really cool work. But again, that kind of cold clinical feeling, not very relaxing. And so I tried working at a spa for a little while, and I felt like you just had to treat a million people in a row with very little downtime, and you had to sell products to make any kind of money. And I didn't like the kinds of products we were using. And I kept asking management, like, hey, could we think about using something more organic or more natural? And that was just kind of, totally passed over. And I really realized, what, if I want this very warm setting, but a very clinical practice, I'm going to have to start it myself. But, when I started out, I had a lot of debt from school. I had no idea what to do. And I didn't have any kind of like investors or startup capital. So I tried to think about ways that I could start a practice for free. And I found a physical therapy studio near my house and said to them, I walked in and just sort of introduced myself. And I asked if they had massage. They didn't. And I said to them, I bet your patients would come back more regularly if you offered them massage for free twice a week. Why don't you let me work on your patients for free 2 days a week, and in exchange, let me use this space when you're not using it? And they kind of looked at me like, who's this girl? Like, who's this 24-year-old kid? But they let me do it. And so, that was in the summer. In May, I had maybe 10 clients. And by August, I had 110 clients who were, those people who were getting those free 10-minute massages. They were coming back to see me for an hour. And I also realized if I'm giving my time away for free, I better have clients in here when I'm not using it. So I started to look for individuals in the community who see a volume of their own private clients. So specifically hairdressers, because they see like 50 people a week. Personal trainers are some of my favorite. Their clients are sore, they can afford massage. So, I started to try to look for those kinds of people and trade massage for haircuts, massage for personal training, massage for dentistry, you name it. I was trading massage. And not for everything, but for most things. And it really helped build up my following, build up my client base. And, after a few months of doing that, I realized I can't trade my time anymore. It's too valuable. I need to start paying for a space. And so I was able to find a space that was a pretty excellent space to start with. And that's how I got my private practice started with zero money and, leveraging my time and energy for, trying to make this impossible thing possible. Yeah. So that's how I got my start.
I think that's a great story, and I think a lot of the time I hear people like, sort of have like fixed. I go on about like growth and fixed mindsets, but like that's having a growth mindset of really saying, okay, well, this is my current situation. I don't really like it. I need to take action. I need to do what I need to do with the purpose of knowing that I'm going to get out of that. And I think that that's a really important thing. I talk a lot about mindset, marketing, sales, everything else, but mindset's really big. And being able to say like, hey, I'm not happy where I am. I want to go to here. I need to figure out the path, and sticking to it is really, I think is a really important aspect, as a business owner. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into it as we talk, like different stages and mindset shifts that you've had to have and all that type of stuff as well. But yeah, I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I think about that a lot too, because I think when you're in a good headspace, it really changes the kinds of questions you're asking yourself, and the kinds of questions you're asking have the capacity to change your life in a lot of ways. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but, even making that little shift, instead of asking yourself, like, why is this happening to me? Making that little tiny shift and saying, why is this happening for me? What's great about this, especially when something bad happens? Okay, where's the good in this? What's great about this? And I feel like when you can get yourself in a better headspace, you just have more access to the resources that are in your mind and your own resilience, your own resourcefulness. You just access it in a different kind of way that when you're freaking out, you don't really have access to those things because you're stuck. And I'm a very anxious person. I'll be the first to tell you, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And mindset shifts have been really just the best thing for me. It's been the thing that propels me forward for sure.
Yeah, I could totally agree with you. And I mean, there's been different parts of my career as well where it's like you've got to really like, I sort of say it's like you want to have, I always say this, and it'd be interesting to get your kind of thoughts. It's like you have a bit of an anchor. So that like, hey, I know I'm not going to be treating forever, but the goal is to get to this point. Don't maybe exactly know how I'm going to get to there, but this is sort of the path that I want to go. So having that anchor, that sort of like when things are going shitty, which they will. Sorry, I'm the demotivator on this talk. Like things will go wrong in business, guaranteed. Anyone tells you no, they're lying to you. It's how you respond. So having that mindset where things might be going wrong for a period of time, but saying, hey, you know what, I'm getting feedback. So like from that feedback, I have two ways. Like you said, throw in the towel and kind of be negative about it, or I can say, okay, this is what's going on. Why is this happening? And for me, I always try to figure out, okay, why is it happening? How do I get around this? Or like, how do I, get past this challenge? And then what happens is you start to build more confidence in terms of your skill sets. And then when these things happen again, you're like, oh, no problem. I've already seen it. So, there's probably a million things you've seen as running a high level clinic that people, haven't got to yet. So you end up having that kind of thing. So I think that's really important to highlight to kind of start is the mindset, being positive and focused, right?
Absolutely. And every successful business is built on a mountain of failure, like tons of failures. The only difference between a business that's successful and one that isn't is that every time I failed, I picked myself back up and I did it. And I kept going and I kept trying. That's literally the only difference because everybody has setbacks, everybody has challenges, and it sounds super cheesy, but what if you try to think about challenges as the universe on your side calling you to grow? And just getting yourself back up again. That's literally the only difference between a business that succeeds and one that fails is that you have the audacity to say, fuck this, I'm going to figure it out. Like, I don't care what it takes. I will figure it out. And sometimes businesses come back in different versions. There are forces outside of our control, right? Like we just went through a terrifying year of all kinds of horrible things, and I lost 2 of my 4 clinics and, I lost my best operations manager who had been supporting me. She moved to South Carolina and just never came back, and I did all of this about a minute after having a 9-month-old baby. I laid off 48 people. A week later, had a baby. And then all of this crazy stuff happened in New York City, like which was the hotbed in the US of COVID, obviously, at the time in March. And so, I definitely, it's not to say that I don't get down or that I don't experience those moments of like, oh my gosh, is this a sign that I should just stop and do something else? But I think at the end of the day, you just have to kind of take a deep breath, remember what your values are, call on your resilience, and just try again. And I'm really thrilled that I did hang in there. And even though we had to be closed for 5 months, we did reopen. We finished out our year as a 7-figure year, breaking that $1 million mark, which meant a lot to me. And I'm right now looking at amazing real estate opportunities, because the wonderful thing is whenever there's a shakeup, whenever there's bad things, good things come of it, right? Like there's going to be so much cool real estate becoming available, especially in New York, where it's really challenging to find good real estate. There's going to be businesses for sale, where maybe businesses that are closing, where the therapists need a new home. So for me, I'm trying to look at all of these different opportunities. Maybe I'm going to buy a business. Maybe I'm going to, look at new opportunities and new spaces I never could have afforded before. So I'm just trying to think about, where can we expand? How can we pick ourselves up and end the year even stronger than we started?
Yeah, and I absolutely love it. And it's that driven like personality. I know when we kind of first chatted, 2 weeks ago or whatever, it's that driven kind of personality that really I feel is like really one of the most important aspects in a business owner, to really being successful long term. And not saying anything wrong about it not having it, but it's one of the key things. Even when I look at working with clients, I look at that mindset, because there's lots of people who want help, and I talk with during the weeks and so on, but they're not the right fit because of that kind of limiting mindset. So I think that's huge. Now, I know you've had a lot of success very quickly and stuff. So I'd love to kind of chat a bit about certain stages of your business. And I think this is one thing that I've went through and sort of saw, like, as I was going from a solo practitioner to starting to hire people and growing that kind of team, some of the stages that you hit and what were some of the challenges that you faced and kind of how you overcame them.
Sure, absolutely. I think it can be very scary if you have a private practice to bring on that very first hire, especially if they're doing the exact same thing you're doing, in our case, massage therapy. I think, what I felt in myself, and this is something I see in a lot of my consulting clients as well, is that they're terrified, what if this therapist treats a client and the client doesn't have a good experience and they don't represent my brand well, or what if the therapist treats a client and they love that therapist and they're not seeing me anymore and they're taking my clients away and then they leave, and you all these really catastrophic things come out of the woodwork in our mind, and I think, again, with mindset, we go to this place of, there's this therapist Seligman, he calls it the 3 Ps of learned helplessness. And it's your mind imagining whatever the problem is, it is permanent, pervasive, or personal. So I'll dive in, right? Whatever your problem is, it's permanent. They're going to leave. It's going to be gone. My business is going to be over forever. It's the end of everything. Or your brain will imagine your problem is pervasive. It's going to take over every area of my whole life. I'm going to lose my business, my reputation, everything. Or it's personal. Only I've ever gone through this. No one can understand me. No one's ever experienced this thing. I'm alone in this problem. No one's ever had this problem. And what's funny is that those are totally unoriginal thoughts. It's just what our minds do when they're stressed or scared, because our brains are not evolved to be happy. Our brains are evolved to be surviving, right? Like, our brain is evolved to look for the next issue, the next problem, the next threat, the next dangerous thing. So for me, when I brought on my first employee, I had to kind of look at all of those things and say, okay, brain, I see what you're up to. You're giving me the 3 Ps, the permanent, pervasive, personal. I see what you're doing. Thanks, but no thanks. We've got this, go take a nap. I've got you. And I had to really, calm that part of my brain down so that I could focus on, okay, how do I support a new hire so that they don't leave? How can I make sure that they are having just the very best work experience, and so that my clients are feeling it? How can I nurture my therapist so that my clients feel nurtured as well? How can I lead as an example and be a really excellent boss and leader that they can look up to? And I think one of the first hurdles I had to overcome was I really wanted to be liked by my employees. And, I think when you have that urge to nurture everyone, you also have to turn it towards nurturing your business and having good boundaries. And sometimes I'm not their best friend. Sometimes I give critical feedback where, as kind as I'm trying to be, it pisses them off, or, it's not what they wanted to hear that day. But these kinds of boundary settings are just massively important to scale any business at any level. And then as the business started growing and I started bringing on more than just practitioners, but actually like virtual assistants, and then in-person assistants, and front desk folks, and then operations managers. Every single time there's that step to that next level, that next growth phase, I have to call on myself for better leadership, because the success or failure of your business depends on your psychology. And for me, I sometimes felt like I was doing everything. So I felt like I was burning out, like I was spread too thin. And I really had to learn the skills of delegation in order to sort of stay sane and also make sure that I was supporting myself and my team. So I think delegation was like a really important thing to learn as well.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. And I mean, I kind of know from my experience, I got really busy and it's a dangerous and can be stressful position, because you're really successful, but now you got to bring someone else on. It's a completely different skill set. And I'm really big into like systems, structures, and strategies, and really you want to have that structure. So it sounds like what you were doing was really extracting like the potential problems that you might have seen, or you go into these Facebook groups and you hear all of these crazy problems, and a lot of them have kind of fixed mindsets. So, okay, well, why would someone want to leave in the first place? Why would someone take clients? Well, a lot of it comes down to culture, what they can get and what they can't get. And hiring people, I'm sure is not, it's not just about how much you pay people, but the environment that you can create. So if you can have a really good, onboarding process, and you have really clear targets, and you have like a really great environment that they love and want to be a part of, then that's a really good starting point to have that culture. Because without that, it really falls apart. And I know I've worked consulting with some places that had a really toxic culture, which people leave, and it's very challenging to scale, because it doesn't come down to the marketing, to the sales. It really comes down to the people. And I think once you get to that level, you kind of shift. You have to shift as the business owner to like a leader. So instead of like just being that one person where you're kind of the business owner, you're treating and doing everything, now all of a sudden you're starting to change the leadership. And as you kind of grow, you kind of have to lead a little bit more and have to be tighter with your systems. And I think that's a big thing. It's like another colleague of mine always says, you don't have to like me, but you have to respect me, right? And I think that's a big thing that sometimes. I had a conversation with a client today who's had a person on their team for like 10 years, and now they're kind of like, not doing so well anymore. So, how do we kind of get those people up? So what were some things, I guess, that you found really allowed you hired some people, and, you started to grow, and you added more practitioners and so on. So like, what were some key things that, challenges that you hit, and some key things that you implemented in order to kind of make sure that you could have that continued growth?
Sure. I think, the most important thing I've found, to keep my team really happy is just very clear, concise, transparent communication. There's so much uncertainty in the world, especially in the job market. And with the challenges that we're having with everything from, COVID to opening new locations, closing, whatever it is, I think your communication has to be really, really concise and transparent at all times. I think that my staff really values the fact that I'm the first one on the phone to say, okay, here's what's going on. Let's chat about it. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk. And also just establishing and setting very clear boundaries and expectations, and then holding people to them. There's nothing more infuriating than watching a peer do something that you were told you're not supposed to do, and they get away with it, right? So you get what you tolerate. And at my company, we tolerate no bullshit. We're adults. We behave like adults. We treat each other like adults, and that's been really important. The other thing is I really try to empower everyone to make decisions. And so, I try to cultivate a little bit of ignorance at the top for certain things. So for example, if an issue comes up in the company where it costs, for example, less than $50 to take care of it, I've empowered my front desk. You go ahead, you figure this out, you take care of it. And I trust you. I'm empowering you. You can decide to do it. let me know about it after the fact in our Monday stand up. I don't want to hear about it until then. And for their supervisor, for the next level up, that number is maybe 10x that. So if there's an issue and it's $500 or less, you go ahead, take care of it. You don't need permission. I'm empowering you, make that decision. Tell me about it in our Monday meeting. And in cultivating this level of ignorance at the top is what I'm calling it. I remove myself as a bottleneck for those decisions that need to be made, because sometimes, there's an incident where there's an issue with a client, or the water thing broke and is leaking, or whatever it is. I don't want them to have to call me every single time something comes up. I want to empower them to do it. I know they can do it. I know that they're smart people. And so, in treating them as such, they feel really good because they're taking care of things in real time. I feel really good because the level of volume, the amount of noise that I'm hearing in my day is much quieter, which allows me to do bigger, greater, cooler things. And I also have this rule, which is whatever we're doing in our job, I want next year, 70% of that to be off our plate and passed down to the next person in line, so that everyone in the whole company is always leveling up, is always learning a new skill, is always growing. And at the very bottom, everything that can be automated should be automated, because stuff that can be automated should not be being done by a human. It's demeaning work to do things that could be automated. So, it's not interesting work. So I always want to make sure that, every year everyone is growing. And I feel like that's helped with my retention rate quite a lot, especially with my front desk and my management, because they're doing something new every single year. They're learning more. I'm investing in them. And, for me, when I think about the things I'm doing every year, if I get rid of 70% of them, it just opens up so much more opportunity for me to be doing those more higher level things. It frees me up for more connection, more networking. This year I wrote a book. It brings me a lot more, creative things, and it prevents me from feeling like I'm stuck somewhere, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I think that this is, the two things that sort of stood out to me in there was like, one, it's really about building the culture of people. So that way it's not you're just a person working in the business. And it's like the business itself is like the downwards, right? So like we're doing it to kind of serve the bigger purpose and not just you. So, one thing with that is like making sure I'm always about, I'm really like stringent about like the 12-week onboarding process is absolutely key in my opinion of like hiring, because people need to be, I focus on teaching in the 12 weeks, and outside of 12 weeks, I focus on coaching. And the coaching, they're coming to me with their numbers, what's going wrong, solutions and stuff, and they're solutions focused because they're thinking towards the bigger picture of the business, and they're kind of aligned towards that. So like, what are your thoughts on that kind of process?
I love it. I love a good system. I love a good process. We do something kind of similar. I would say the only difference is they're often not coming to me for that coaching, but we've paired up every new hire with a senior therapist, and they're going to their therapist for that feedback, that camaraderie, those questions, and I know some places hire like a lead therapist or something like that. But we find that a lot of the senior folks get a lot of joy out of mentoring some of the newer hires and training and doing those Skillshare things. And again, it just cuts down on that noise even one more level. And it's not to say that I don't intervene sometimes. So for example, I like to do a really clear retention review with folks. And I give all of our raises are based on retention over time. So everyone knows exactly where they stand, and they get paid more every single year based on their retention rate. If their retention rate is above average, they're going to get an increase that year. And so when that time of year comes for a lot of folks, if I notice that people are not performing as well as I would like them to, most recently I took everyone out for pizza. This was before COVID, obviously, but I took everyone out for pizza, and we just sit down and have a chat. Like, let's figure out, what is it that's holding us back? What are we afraid of? What are we avoiding? What are we scared of? And I try to kind of focus from that point.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a big thing. Like for me now with the two clinics, like I don't even need to be there at all. It's all remote. Clinic director manages the entire place. And it's sort of like, we know the metrics so that we can, as business owners and leaders, we can focus on leading the team, getting people in the right spot to replace ourselves so we can make higher level decisions. Now, you're at the stage of, I'm looking at, potentially having other locations or buying business. Like, you can't be doing that when you're stuck in the trenches talking to Sally about why she's not renewing people or getting referrals and that type of stuff. So, what you said with the systems and automation, that's a really huge thing. that I found. So I guess like, we kind of always get into this thing for me, and automation I would say automation doesn't necessarily mean like it's just a computer or sequence doing it. Automation, it just means you're not doing it. So it could be delegated to an admin. I'm not answering the phone. That's automated. The front desk calls them. We have salespeople and so on. So, and then we've got sequences for follow-ups and all of those kind of like automations that our computer bots do and so on. So what was like what are some really important automations, or like what was one key automation that really allowed you to free up some time?
I think for me, my favorite one is actually Frederick, that marketing tool. So Frederick is a tool that sits on top of MindBody Online, and actually MindBody bought Booker, I'm pretty sure, to buy Frederick, because Booker had owned Frederick. And what's neat about that software is that it combs through your schedule and it will say predictively, oh, you know what? Tuesday's pretty quiet. Let's go ahead and comb through all of the folks who came in on Tuesday historically, and then we'll go ahead and text them. If you have this feature turned on, it's called Fill Slow Times. We'll text them and say, hey, we have this appointment available Tuesday. Let us know if you'd like it. Click here to book. And what's neat about that is it's sort of like, I love AI. I just love everything about the fact that it
sounds like a CRM.
It's neat. Yes, it's part of the CRM. So it picks up on MindBody Online, which is our scheduling software, anyone who'd had previously come in at that time. And it's a really neat automated way to fill slow times. Another automation thing that I love is with our social media, we like Later, and there's lots of software that does this, but basically scheduling your posts, scheduling your stories. You don't want to have to be constantly on top of that stuff. But having all of that just on a drip is really nice. There's also things like TweetDeck or stuff, for if you're a Twitter person, but, having the blogs schedule in advance. I love the idea of sitting down, getting everything scheduled, and then it's all on a timeline. So that kind of automation, everything online booking, like everything. We haven't done a chat bot yet. I don't know if we'll go down that route, but, it's been very important as I think about it too. Our internal motto, I know a lot of companies have like an external motto, but it's also good to have an internal motto. And ours is every interaction exudes warmth. So from the time that client is on our website to calling us, the first call that they have should exude warmth. When they come in and they see our front desk, they should get that warm feeling when they're greeted by their therapist and they're in the treatment room, to the time they're on our table, to getting the massage, to the time they have that, exit interview, which is really important for retention. What did we focus on today? What did we notice? What are we going to focus on next time? To that checkout, to the follow-ups that they get. I want every single interaction every time to exude warmth. And, those kind of internal, I think it's important for every company to have that internal motto. I know, for example, a friend of mine sits on Planned Parenthood, and he told me their motto, and I couldn't handle it. It was so funny. So Planned Parenthood, I forget what their external motto is, but their internal motto is, don't fuck with us, don't fuck without us. And I thought that was just the funniest. I love a good motto like that.
Yeah, totally get it. And I always talk about this as like what I refer to as like the patient success journey. So like actually, and a lot of businesses skip this phase, but it's like one of the most, like when I start with clients, like one of the most important things I look at is what is supposed to happen in this journey for the patient. And a lot of people don't think about that, get patient in and whatever, but I map it out, and then I really focus on creating the experience. And there was I'm really huge about over delivering service. And there was an episode that I did with Vance Morris from, he worked in Disney and taking like Disneyfying businesses and, creating that experience that makes it absolutely irresistible. That way you can charge premium rates. People will come back. They will refer. It's better experience overall that really matters. And I think what you said is key. Like, it's really, you need to know like what you want to happen at each stage of the business and understand that people come in at different stages. You've got people who are leads. Like, how do you want the business to be seen? What's your sales process like? Your rebooking, your referrals. A lot of the time, these things aren't really hammered out. And I think that was one of the things that allowed me to have a lot of success was I'm really into systems and strategies and all that stuff. And I was really specific what needed to happen. Like I was very obsessive with the patient success journey that like, hey, if someone's fallen off, we need to get them back in. We need to do what we need to do in order to get them back in, and not to be like a bugging people, but we want to know why. And we implement things like NPS, Net Promoter Score, and like really understanding like what is someone's experience and really caring about them. I mean, I love direct mail. I love sending letters in the mail, handwritten letters, all that stuff. And I think it's those things that can really make a difference because most people are not doing it.
Yeah. And
Right?
to piggyback on that, I think, a huge mistake that I see a lot of business owners making is that the business owner falls really in love with their services. And instead, they should be falling in love with their clients first. Like you have to fall in love with your patients, your clients. You have to fall in love with what makes them insanely happy, what makes them those raving fans. It's what I call my red velvet rope clients. When you're like outside of a club and there's that red velvet rope that keeps out everyone and they only let in the VIPs. When I think about the kinds of clients we're working with, I want to think about the clients who are leaving amazing reviews. They're coming regularly. They care about their health. They're interested. They're engaged. They're raving fans. They're telling all their friends. Those are the kinds of clients we want. And I think when you start to ask your clients, very directly, what can we be doing differently? And then listen, and then shut up and listen. Like think about the client journey from a client perspective. I see this problem all the time on websites too, where, a business owner will have this really wonderful brand and be talking about all these ideas that they have, and then I look at their website and it's not a reflection of that at all, and the client is totally missing it, or they don't have a very clear call to action like a book now button. They haven't considered the client experience. And I think you really have to go through your business, and it's hard, right? Because we're so attached to it, and we really have a blind spot for it sometimes, which is why I'm a big fan of working with a coach like you, or hiring that mentor, hiring that consultant, getting that outside pair of eyes. And you have to kind of detach your ego from it, right? Because these businesses can feel very much like our babies, and you have to sort of like detach yourself from it and consider it from a different perspective. And I think because we do have that blind spot sometimes for our own business, it's really helpful to surround yourself with people who are really smart and critical, looking at things critically and there to give you that mentorship, that support, that advice.
Yeah, totally get it. And you brought up one thing that drives me absolute nuts. Hey, I'm starting my business. What should my logo be? What color should I have? Is this business card good? And my website. And one of the most critical things, and I mean, we're not taught that, right? Obviously. So, but when you mention website, I would say 99.9% of the websites that I see are set up to fail because number one, I believe they should be more direct response. That's my personal opinion, because so if someone's going to my website, the whole purpose of marketing is to attract and repel. So if someone's going to my website, attract them into my world or repel them out because they're not the right fit. So that's kind of my belief. They should be direct response, have clear call to actions for cold, warm, hot. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
Then having the experience of the client too. So like, what do you want them to do? So if someone is cold, not everyone's going to book right away. And I see massage therapists, like if someone doesn't book right away, there's so much friction in the online scheduling. What about the people who have questions? Like if we don't cater to them and that experience, and we don't think through that, we're going to lose those people.
Yeah. I think people also, they try to do too much. They try to offer a million services. They make the mistake of trying to be for everyone instead of having their niche. And, when you're for everyone, you're for no one, and it doesn't resonate as much. And I think, in trying to make your business stand out from other businesses, when you talk to a therapist and you ask them, why are you awesome? It's very hard for them to consider that. So again, with framing those questions, one of the questions I love to ask is, if you stopped offering your services tomorrow, what would your clients miss most about working with you? And then we take those answers and make sure that that's front and center on their website. Make sure that that's clear and obvious in their marketing, in the tone that they're using, in the way that they're communicating, because a therapist, maybe it's that connection, or maybe it's the kind of specific work that they do, or the fact that, they're the fastest for mobile massage in the business. They'll be at your house in 10 minutes, whatever the thing is. I think people kind of forget to put that foot forward, and at our studio, one of the things that makes us unique is that I've really tried to set this up to be a place that feels warm, comfortable, and safe for folks who wouldn't necessarily come in to get a massage for any particular reason. So, maybe that they're embarrassed about their bodies, or they're going through a transition or a weight change, or they have a condition that they feel embarrassed about. I've tried really hard to make our website and our business and our brand accessible to everyone. And so I'm really proud that the community that we serve is as diverse as the therapists that I hire, is as diverse as the community that we're in New York. And that's been really important to me as I grow my business.
Yeah, totally get it. And I think that's huge, is really knowing the niche that you want to go after and having a um, clear detailed like point, and understanding where people are and understanding your niche. And I think that that's really big. It's one of the, it's probably one of the biggest things that I think people breeze past, is they get in scarcity mindset and say, well, if I go after only one segment, then I'm going to lose out. And it's just really not the case. Like,
Yeah.
we want to have clear messaging to people, and also understand we're detailing that experience. Because at the end of the day, businesses exist to solve problems, and the bigger problems you can solve and the more detailed that you can hone in on, the more you will be more successful. So if the problem that you're solving is you don't want to work at Massage Envy, that's not going to be you're probably not going to have very much success.
Yeah.
So
And memorable too. Like when I think about the brands that are really impactful. So I was reading this one copywriters. There's this great thing called Clubhouse that I'm really into right now, this online platform. And I'm on Clubhouse. Yeah. And I was looking earlier in the conversation, and there's this girl who's a copy editor. And what she does is she writes copy for brands, and she writes ads for brands, and on her own page, she said under her bio, kicking bad copy in the dick. It was just like, wow, like that's really, wow, that's impactful. It's funny. Or on a tamer side, sorry, I swear a lot. On the tamer side, I think about my dentist in New York. So he markets himself as the jazz dentist. When you go into his office, he's playing really good jazz music. He has these beautiful photos, black and white photos of jazz musicians. And on his website, he says that he treats jazz musicians who have teeth issues because of the kind of woodwind and brass instruments that they're playing that cause these issues. Now, am I a jazz musician? Absolutely not. But I think it's cool. I love the music he plays. I like that he is such a specialist. It's above and beyond my needs. And I think that's awesome. And it's memorable too, right? Like I've never heard of a jazz dentist. I think that's really neat. And so I always try to think about, innovation. It really happens at the meeting of two totally different things, that intersection where you bring together two totally different concepts. And I think that that's that sweet spot where you get really cool branding, really cool marketing, because nobody wants to go to some cookie cutter place that's, this big corporate place. They want to go, there's a big movement to shop local, but, we also want to make sure that our services are professional and tailored, and that our branding is interesting. It's a new generation. And especially with things like social media, there's so much opportunity without paid ad dollars to go this organic traffic route and find these opportunities, these clients, and places that we've never been able to do that historically. So like when I started in 2008, we didn't have a lot of the technology that we have now. We didn't have Google Business. I think Yelp barely existed, if it did at all. Websites, we didn't have Squarespace. You couldn't just pop on and make an easy website. Things have changed. And I think it's so important also for therapists to stay on top of that technology as it changes, because there's new cool stuff coming out all the time. And I think that those kind of things, like I think of Appointment Hero, for example. There's this great site called Appointment Hero where if you're a solo practitioner and you're missing a call, it automatically texts that client and gives them your online schedule right there. So you can just book it right from your text message, so that, that client isn't just sitting there like, oh, I guess no one answered. I'm going to call somewhere else. It's that auto text of like, hey, I'm so sorry I missed your call. Here's my calendar if you'd like to go ahead and schedule right here. And that's the kind of opportunities that we just have to stay on top of technology and see what kind of things are coming out all the time,
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like, I love the marketing aspect, and I always I call it omnipresence marketing, and I try to shoot. I basically have like 12 different streams of leads coming in, both from online, offline partnerships. So some are paid, some are not. But yeah, it's always modifying and seeing how we can do. And one trend that I really see is that people, especially now, are looking more communities. That's why people are going to Clubhouse and everything else. Like they're looking for communities and being a part of something. And the market sophistication has grown tremendously because people are online more, especially during shutdowns, COVID, and so on. Like we've seen that people are learning more online. So things are starting to shift. So we really need to be able to, shift how we are marketing. how we're doing as well. I know like people who are running Facebook ads and stuff, like I still, I still will use Facebook because it's extremely cheap instead of, buying radio ads and everything else. But, there's a way that you've got to shift. And I've even known like with how I've marketed traditionally, it's doing different things. And I'm starting to change a lot of in experimenting. I was spending tons of money on trying to experiment with different ways to like build that patient journey and to build the community experience. So, I totally think that's huge. What are some things do you think, I guess, going into 2021 and later this year, what do you think, what are some predictions that you see in terms of like a brick and mortar based business and massage, like, and changes?
I'm excited for 2021. As I mentioned before, I think there's a lot of really cool real estate coming on the market. A lot of businesses have gone fully remote, which means these office spaces are empty, which means there's a lot of exciting places for us to be that we maybe couldn't have afforded before, storefronts, things like that. I also think this has been a stressful effing year. This has been one of the most stressful years in anyone's lifetime who's currently alive. And so when I think about how that impacts someone's physical health and the fact that we have an entire population who's pretty traumatized and going to need so much self-care, so much massage, so much pain relief, especially because now we're sitting at these home offices and it's like this like not ergonomic, like terrible desk chairs and we're hunched over these laptops. I think I'm like sitting up straight as I say this, I think the amount of stress and anxiety that people have experienced, this is a huge opportunity for the field of massage, because I think, there's also just coming to mind, a lot of folks have left the industry or have moved to different states, and I think that there's going to be a real need for more therapists. And I also know that, especially in the US, a lot of our programs have been disrupted and students who were in school have been either displaced or they're not signing up for school or they didn't finish their program. So we're not going to be graduating as many students this year, which is kind of scary as a business owner because we rely on, regular therapists joining our economy of therapists to survive. So I predict that we're going to have to do more training for folks who are coming out of this situation. I predict that there's going to be more opportunities to see clients and that there'll probably be less people in the field available. So I think it's ripe for opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Love it. Love it. And I'm curious, like, I know you've gotten to kind of like that peak sort of level now where you've got a lot of people, you're looking at kind of, expanding out. So, we talked a bit about systems, hiring people and great culture and stuff. What are some other kind of keys that you went through that you found to be good contributing factors to like where you've gotten today outside of mindset and I guess the stuff that we talked about?
I think for me, a lot of it is reining in my anxiety through activities that I know keep me calmer. Work is important, so is rest. Work is important, so is working out. So is eating decently, so is getting enough sleep. You're not making good decisions if you're exhausted. You're not making good decisions if by the end of the day you don't have any more energy. Delegation is massively important. Asking for help, admitting, I don't know the answer to this. Even things like, okay, I know I can do it faster than someone else, but when am I going to have time to do it? Maybe if I delegate this to someone, they will actually do it before I do, even though I could do it faster. Or I don't know. I think for myself, it can feel like taking your hands off the steering wheel a little bit, but trying not to be a micromanager, trying to let and empower people to do the things that you hired them to do, making those good hires. For me, I also invest every single year in a new coach, which sounds a little bit nuts. And there's been a year where I had like 3 different coaches because I like the different things that they brought to the table. Like one was very numbers strategy guy, and one was very like 30,000 foot view, and one was more like general lifestyle stuff. But I just feel like for me to level up, having a coach every single year is really helpful, and to focus on an area that you're not doing enough in, because we all know there are things in our business that we are not doing that we're supposed to be doing. Even if you think like, even for me, I've made over $10 million in sales in my business. There are still things I don't know enough about. The coach I hired right now, she talks all about building a list rapidly. And I was thinking about this, like our list is 20,000 people, but we could always be building a bigger list. We could always be bringing in more, and that's 20,000 who've made a purchase, because my list has been very particular to just the folks who've made a purchase. But now I'm starting to think more about, what, we should be collecting emails. We should be running contests to bring more people in. We should be doing more B2B partnerships where we're getting that email list bigger and bigger, because your list is a huge, huge asset. It's probably arguably the most important asset of your business aside from your people, and when you focus on investing in your people as well, especially in a service-based business, our people are our product. They're the most important. Our employees are the most important resource that we have in our business. So, I've made it a point to invest in their continuing education. So, for example, if they want to go get prenatal certified, I want them to go do that. I give them a chunk of change to go do that, because I think that's really important. We also do a lot of in-house training and things like that. And I just think about, for growth, how important it is to, really ask for help. Don't go it alone. Even professional athletes, they don't just get out of their car and go play on the court, right? Like they sit in the locker room with their trainer for a reason. There's a way that we level up, and it's by getting out of our own way. And, for me, a lot of that just had to do with not being a bottleneck in my organization, and listening to the advice of people who are even in different industries. There's so much to learn from people who are not in our industry also. I might have a particular problem and go to my friend Mikey, who owns a computer hardware store, and say, Mikey, how the heck do you solve for this when this happens? Or, my friend, also named Mike, actually, who has a company called Meatball Shop. He's a restaurateur. Mike, what do you do when this happens? And it's really fascinating to see how other industries handle the same things. There's a really great book called Setting the Table that's all about the restaurant industry. And one thing he talks about in terms of his own company culture is it's these 3 tenets of: we do the right thing, we do the best we can, we show people we care. And it's so true that when things break down in a business, in my company, it's because we didn't do the right thing, or we didn't do the best we can, or we didn't show our coworker, our client, our peer that we care. And so I think bringing it back to that, there's just a lot of things to learn from other people around us. And I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly a student.
Yeah, I love it. And Jay Abraham is one of my bigger mentors, and he's always pushed to say, look outside your industry, the answers are there. So I spend a lot of time. I have a colleague of mine that I'm talking to next week, who is a restaurant, multiple franchise owner. And we talk about well, how do you market? How do you overcome these situations? I learned a lot about customer service from a guy in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Ari Weinsweg, who owns Zingerman's, and they do about 80 million a year. And I've learned a lot from outside industry. So I think that's a really, really, really important, aspect, especially massage therapists. I find practitioners are like this. They're very super focused through the straw. And it's the answers are out there. I can tell you realtors, how they market is completely insurance salesmen. They buy old leads. They call them on the phone, not everyone, but their marketing and the sales, the answers are out there. Someone else is doing it somewhere else. And I've, swiped a lot of different things myself. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
It's so true. We bought a house back in January in Virginia, and our realtor came by the other day. We bought this house a year ago. He came by the other day with a little bag, and it had a bottle of wine and 2 little portable wine cups, which I was like, this is interesting. But 2 little wine cups that had the company's name on it, the logo, branded. And I remember thinking, it's not like we're going to buy another house anytime soon. I don't have that kind of money. But it's interesting that, that's right. We would be a referral to them if we were going to send them some business. So it is, other industries do things totally different from us. It's so true. And there is a lot to learn from that.
Totally. And just what you said, with partnering with the other businesses, there's lots that I've done joint ventures with. And I have a realtor that when someone new moves into the neighborhood, well, guess what? They probably need a gym, they need a therapist, and so on. So we do packages for people who are moving into the area for that realtor. So now all of a sudden, as a realtor, they've got a competitive edge too, because now all of a sudden you can get $3,000-$4,000 worth of value from buying from this realtor outside of that. So absolutely love it.
Awesome.
I appreciate your time so much today and sharing all of your experience and wisdom. It's definitely awesome to have you on here and help other people who are struggling. And So I guess like before we kind of sign off, like any sort of like last minute thoughts or anything like that based on what we went through. I know we went through quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the biggest advice I would give to anyone who's out there who is struggling or, who's trying to level up is just don't go it alone. Get an accountability partner, get a mentor, get a coach, get a consultant. Brad offers phenomenal resources. I have a new book called Massage MBA, and it's all about growing a practice. I was really excited. That came out on Monday, and it already hit #1 bestseller on Amazon, which I was really happy about for massage. But don't go it alone. Ask my help, ask Brad's help. I know our doors are always open. Certainly reach out. Don't go it alone. There's no embarrassment. There's no question too small. I think just try to cultivate that kind of community, because it can be really isolating as a business owner, and it can be really isolating as a solo practitioner. So build that community. I think that's really important.
For sure. And if people want to learn more about you and your book and everything else, how can they find out about you?
Absolutely. The book is available on Amazon, and my website is wellnessbusinessconsulting.com.
I'll make sure I link it below. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for sharing all of your valuable advice, and I appreciate it. And so I would imagine everyone else here does. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me.